Hi, everyone. I'm Sonia Dolan. I'm one of the co-founders of Mettle Health, and we are doing a little mini Mettle interview with Heather Isaacs, the chaplain on the team. Heather, thank you so much for being here with me. I'm hoping you can introduce yourself.
Hi, Sonia. Yeah, no, thanks for doing this today. Yeah, my name's Heather Isaacs, and I live in the Central Valley with my partner and his children. I've been a chaplain since 2006, and most of those years were spent in hospice and palliative care. And more recently, I've been working in hospital settings and with Mettle.
Hmm, great. Can you do a little bit of a primer on what chaplaincy is? Because I think for a lot of people, it's kind of a mystery zone. I know that for myself, before I started working in hospice, I would not have been able to give you a definition. So I have to assume that others are in the same boat. Do you have just a quick, like, how do you describe what you do to people?
Yeah, for me, I feel like being a chaplain is really how to be with people in ways that align with their values and needs and experiences of life, and to uplift in some way their sense of strength, hope, meaning, whatever might be an anchor for them, or maybe they've lost an anchor or have never really felt that, to kind of explore where that might be available to them now, given whatever circumstances of life have happened. So being with people in the meaning making, the dissolution of meaning.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it sometimes has a religious component, sometimes spiritual, not religious, sometimes more philosophical, existential, but always in the realm of what is of the deepest, most sacred beliefs, values of that person and their community, however they define that.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, I think there's a pretty big misconception about the religious aspect of it. And you chaplains go so far outside of that, beyond that. It just feels like a very small piece. And I love opening it up with you because we get to hear about just like, who are you at your core? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I also feel kind of that's the evolution of chaplaincy too. Like
Mm.
I think it's a really common misunderstanding for really good reasons. And part of that has
Yeah.
to do with like the history of chaplaincy being rooted in more kind of white Protestant
Mm.
institutional settings.
Yep.
And so to see chaplaincy becoming more inclusive and diversifying to really represent the people that we're serving, um, feels also like where that's part of that misunderstanding has really good good reasons.
Yeah. Yep.
And so yeah, I don't try to defend that in any way. But I am grateful too for the ways that it's opening and changing and learning.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I say when I talk about chaplains is the concept of meeting people where they are, which I've now come to understand through my work, but I'm wondering if you can define it for how you enter a room with someone.
Yeah, how I enter a room with someone, that's such a good question. I feel like there's I would say at least two parts of that for me in entering a room. One, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's needed. I don't know the story, the experience, the truth of the person and persons I'm going to encounter. And so, what is the space I can enter in where I can, on one hand, have a really open mind, open heart to whatever I'm going to encounter, and then to also be grounded in some sense of my own um, connection to life,
Mm.
self, something greater than myself that can also be a resource to me when I go into that space. So it's a place that's both very flexible. You try to be flexible and open and not assuming that you know what's needed, so you can be kind of nimble in the
Mm.
moment. And then encountering where people are, whatever that truth is for them, it oftentimes is raw, um, there may not be words yet for it. It
Mm.
may be grief, anger, that just it needs a space to have witness and someone to like see you and to say like, I really see what you're living with right now,
Mm.
and not try to explain it away or give answers for it.
Yeah. No small feat, honestly. Like considering that we each bring a part of ourselves into every interaction. So to really put that aside feels like an extra gorgeous step of truly meeting that person where they are. When you were talking about all the different things that chaplains can cover, I am wondering if you can give examples of some of the conversations you've had under the banner of chaplaincy. I greedy me, like I usually tend to love the stories from chaplains, so I'm hoping you can share some with everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a, let's see, how would I even encompass some of the conversations I've had? I would say in my years, with hospice and palliative care, I was often meeting people in places where they were already grappling with mortality and trying to make sense of the unknown that they
Mm.
were facing. So I think a lot of times our conversations had to do with what to expect and will my family be okay? And um, how do I kind of process and grieve what I'm losing, and how do I make space for something else? So uh, I know I've had conversations that can be like, I'm thinking of it's so hard. I'm trying to think of how to talk about the conversations themselves.
I will say it's weirdly difficult, and I've experienced that same thing when talking to a lot of people who work in this. Like for a specific story, it becomes
Yeah.
weirdly difficult. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Well, it's sometimes it's also well, I'll tell a story because I know in part he had given me permission to share it in a way that without revealing certain
Mm.
details. But I remember this was a patient, and we had been working together for some time. He was living with cancer,
Mm.
and the tumor was very visible in his body, and he was living with a lot of pain and a lot of like physical pain. And then one day he told me a story, and it kind of came in the form of me more like almost a confession. And it was his own self-forgiveness journey. And I remember specifically, he told me the story, and I can't tell what he shared with me, but it had to do with a choice that he had to make at a certain point in his life. And there was no good
Mm.
outcome. Like, no matter what he chose, ultimately in that situation, someone was going to die. And so because there had been no good outcome, he took it on himself as a kind of moral failing, um, that he couldn't save everybody in that situation. And he lived with this as like his own failure. And there was this part of me that I think wanted to be like, you didn't really have a choice. You were doing the best you could. And I really there's a part of me, I admit, wanted to kind of like step in and kind of make it better for him.
Mm.
And what I could really hear him saying though is, no, this is my truth. Like, I've been living with this and I needed to share it with somebody. He didn't need me to like absolve him or to
Mm.
make it or to kind of convince him that he didn't even need forgiveness. This was about him sharing this with me and trusting that he could share it with me. And that night he had like a massive pain crisis. Like, he had trouble with his bowels that had caused immense pain. And he had a moment where he called out to God. He told me this the next day. I came in and he's like, "What did you do? Like, what did you do?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I don't know. Last night I was having all this pain and I reached out to God and I said, I don't deserve this pain. Like, I don't deserve this pain. Like, why are you doing to this to me? I wanted to stop." And he said, all of a sudden it stopped. The pain just like went away. And I said, I don't know what happened. I'm just grateful you're not in pain now. But as I was piecing it together with him, I think those two things were connected. I think in some way, him being able to unburden himself or release this like secret, like he was carrying kind of like a secret in his life that he blamed himself for, then brought him into a place where he, even if it wasn't directly connected, he kind of could name like, I don't deserve this pain. It's not fair. And for whatever reason, in that moment at least, it lifted. And I thought, like, I'm so grateful I didn't try to step in and fix it for him, right? Like something in himself was unburdening and unwinding that hurt. And I got to be the person that could hold that with him.
Mm.
That makes sense?
Absolutely. It just reminds me of what you said at the beginning of witnessing people. You were his witness. You were the person, like you said, that he trusted with this really difficult thing to share. And I know for myself, sharing it like releases something that feels cathartic in some capacity. It absolutely makes so much sense. And just as a perfect, I think it's a great example of chaplaincy. Like I'm not here to fix it or say you're fine or, like letting people be in that space of hurt and saying, I'm going to sit with you in this moment. There's definitely something there to that. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing that beautiful story and sharing a bit about yourself. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.